I am in the community. I'm not just showing up because I need a quote or I'm trying to get this interview. I'm showing up because I care, or I'm showing up because this is a part of who I am as well. What we have seen, especially with social media, is because you have proximity to people, sometimes people equate that with automatic access. I think with anything, people see right through those things. And I think it's important that we do, because you want to keep people around you that want to be around you for you.
But it's on your mind. Make we have a time. Hey, yeah.
If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please remember to leave a rating and review. And if you're listening or watching on YouTube, remember to like, comment, and share this episode. Now grab your tea, coffee, or a glass of wine and let's talk the Tings. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Let's Talk the Tings, where we discuss personal growth, music, travel, and film while encouraging you to live fearlessly and fabulously. This week, we are talking to Tings with a Guyanese woman who understands that stories don't just inform, they shape power, perception, and possibility. She is an award-winning journalist, entrepreneur, and media innovator, and the founder and CEO of Mel&N Media, Melissa Noel. Hi, Melissa. How are you?
I am doing really, really well. So excited to chat with you.
Oh, same. I'm so happy to have you. And my girl, you have plenty jobs. I almost run out of breath.
I mean, would I be a Caribbean American woman without having plenty jobs?
Exactly. It's true. It's true. Coincidentally, another Guyanese woman, a Guyanese Canadian woman, I said the same thing to Deborah Cox. I was fighting for my life because of all of her achievements.
And look, we love Deborah Cox, okay?
Yes, for sure. For sure.
She does it all. And I think that's one of the most incredible things about Caribbean people, Caribbean women, is that there is no one thing, is that you sometimes you felt like you had to choose one or the other. And I think the beauty,
Yeah.
especially of being in media or in the creative industries, is knowing that you can do multiple things and be great at multiple things, and you don't necessarily have to just do one or the other or stay in one thing. You don't have to stay in your lane.
Exactly, exactly. I love that. Beautifully said. Thank you so much for being here once again. And so,
Of course.
to open things up, everybody's favorite part of the show is a segment that we call Datna Song. So it's not scary. I feel like I have to give the disclaimer every time. It's not scary. I'm just gonna
You
read
sure?
messages. I'm sure. It's I'm just gonna read messages or social media posts that listeners sent in. And if you think it sounds crazy or a little concerning, you just say that not sound safe and explain why. And if you agree, you just say you agree and explain why. Sounds good?
Okay. Sounds
All
good.
right. So the first person said, performative kindness is the ego trying to be a good person. True kindness is when you've been humbled by your own path and can empathize with someone else.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that sounds safe. And especially the whole performative kindness thing, I'm sure you see it in media, especially where, you've been positioned, that it's very difficult to discern who's being kind to you because they really like Melissa versus who's being kind to you because they want to be a part of
They want
something you're doing
access.
or want
Yeah.
access. Exactly.
Yeah. It is one of the things that discernment, that third eye, that, really understanding who and why people are coming to you is a skill
Yes.
that is important to develop, especially as you climb in, whether it's your career, your personal life, just who you are, because a
Yeah.
lot of times you have people who their intentions are sometimes are not the best, and then there are people who are, they have incredible intentions, but that discernment is so necessary.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's like it gets more and more difficult just because some people are just really dishonest and very good at pretending. So you really have to like pray for discernment, because like you said, it's
Indeed.
very difficult. So we agree on that one. That one sounds safe. So the next one, the person said, I wish I could quit my job so I could focus on my true passion, which is sleeping.
I mean, as much as I love sleep and I would love to agree with you, we can't function like
My
that. So that
God.
one is that doesn't sound safe.
Yeah, no. So
We got to get up and live.
exactly. You can't sleep your life away, but trust me, I get it. Like, if we could achieve our dreams, but still somehow find time to get like adequate sleep, I think that would be the best route. But yeah,
Yes, I
that
feel
not
like it'd
sound
be a
safe at all.
happy, it would be a happy medium.
Yes, for sure, for sure. All right, a few more. The next person said, gosh, this is definitely relatable. I don't know how to turn up anymore. I'm at the bar checking my emails.
That sounds safe. I can relate sometimes, but that is
Yeah,
where
it's not
learn
good.
really understanding when to turn work off and turn your like making sure that your personal life gets that attention. It's something I have struggled with. And I will tell you, sometimes I'm really great at it. Other times it's like, okay, I did not get it right this week, but it's a continued work in progress, and that is okay.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, yes, we can agree that it happens, but nah, we
All right. All right. Two more. The next person said, managing who has access to you is how you maintain your magic.
absolutely agree 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds safe. I think, when we're younger, especially, and even as we grow, I don't think it's really an age thing. I think that the more that you learn that everybody, you said it earlier, may not always have your best intentions, you learn to really be cognizant of who you have around you because it really affects not only how you see yourself, but it could also affect how you see the world. Let's say you have a friend that's really negative. You tell her something or a dream that you have, and she's just really negative and telling you, oh, it doesn't really make sense and blah, blah, blah. You're going to have a different outlook than having a friend that's like, don't say that about yourself. Like, you can do anything,
You can
So
do
it
anything,
really,
yeah.
yeah, it's really important for sure.
I think that one really struck me because a lot of times you share because of course you're excited, or you share because
Yeah.
you want input or from other people, but sometimes that input is an energy killer or a dream killer
Hmm.
because of that energy. And I've had to learn, through my own mistakes of sometimes sharing too early or sharing too much. And it's not to say that everyone has negative intentions, but sometimes energy
Of
just has a way
course.
of shifting things. And so my mom and my grandmother would always say, never let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And I used to
Right.
be like, what are they talking about? But
You get
it
it
is
now.
right. It is such a true thing. It's not like you don't need to hide from people or hide things you're working on. You can
Yeah.
talk about things, but you have to ensure that when things are in progress, that you're making sure that they're protected. That is really, really important, especially when we think about the creative industry, when we think about ownership, when we think about
Yes.
intellectual property. Sometimes you talk too soon, or you don't set things up in the proper way,
Hmm.
things can be taken from you, and I'm
Yeah.
speaking from
Yeah.
experience, right? So it's one of those things where that really resonated. I was like, yes, so true.
Yeah, and that definitely resonated with me as well. And you said a lot of important things, intellectual property, things of that nature. That's something that in our community we don't really do a lot because I don't think it's talked about a lot. And I've had several entrepreneurs like yourself on here that are Caribbean women that are really emphasizing the importance of persons in the creative industry making the steps to ensure that they are protected. And like you said, maybe not sharing ideas too soon if they're not protected, because sadly, it can be taken away from you.
Just the small steps do make the difference. And I know sometimes it can be tedious, but something as simple as making sure that before you pitch that TV series, or that book or whatever it is, you just file your copyright. You file
Yeah.
a copyright, you file it for the copyright office. It's $45, $65 to file that and have that on record so that you're protected, once you're pitching it. It's small things, and think about how quickly we could spend $60. You know what I mean?
Listen, my girl, from you step outside, you spend $60.
Okay, listen, you ain't even touched the front door. Okay, you even touch the front door, $100 gone. So really and truly,
Exactly.
those little things make such a difference. And I know we'll get into that.
Yes, for sure. For the final one, the person said, the most painful betrayals often come from people who you trusted with your story. People who knew your weakness, your fears, your prayers, and still use them as tools, not responsibilities.
I'd have to agree with that one
Yeah.
100%. It's never easy to be betrayed by somebody you trusted,
Of
but you
course.
do ever. But what you do is you learn how to not, of course, not to be bitter, right? Because bitterness is not how you continue to grow, and it's not the kind of energy you want to exude. But you do
Mhm.
learn how to navigate life differently, and it does change. It does change you in ways. So that's, but you have to remind yourself not to allow it to alter who you are at your core. And I think that is so significant, right? I am a kind person by nature. I am a nice
Mhm.
person by nature, but I'm nobody's pushover, right? And so certain
Right.
lessons have taught me how to be more assertive, of course, and to protect me and myself and my business, but not to let anyone change the character that I have. And that is something
Mm.
that I think is really, really important, because at the end of the day, that's who I am. And I think it's really important that I don't allow anyone to change, what was instilled in me from childhood, and the great principles that my parents and grandparents taught me. I think that is what is key. So take the lessons,
Yeah.
get smarter, but don't change who you are at your core. I think that's important.
I love that. I can resonate with every word that you said. I think, unfortunately, and we talk about it a lot with guests on this podcast. Unfortunately, when you are a kind person, people don't see that as an asset or something to be grateful for. Majority of people see it as a form of weakness or a way that they can manipulate that. And although it's really unfortunate, like you said, the important thing is to learn the lesson from it, to sharpen your discernment, and to not allow it to change you. I think that's really the big thing. And you said it, because you're doing yourself and your parents and your grandparents a disservice that brought you up the right way. You don't want to negate all of that because other persons are trying to be manipulative. That's their problem, and that's theirs to reap, what they sow. But at the same
Exactly.
time, you do have to have discernment to say, all right, well, Sally is nice, but I'm going to keep Sally across the street because she has bad
I
intentions, or I figured
I
this
see
out.
how Sally moving, and I know that
Exactly.
I'm not going to change who I am and how I am. I'm always going to be kind and receptive, but I know that I
Right.
cannot keep Sally close.
Exactly, exactly. And like you said, it is hard, especially when most of the time or all of the time, as genuine kind people, you're not looking at somebody as an opportunity. So it's just so hurtful, when you find out you're being betrayed or you're being used or anything of that nature, because they were looking at you as an opportunity and you thought you were building a work relationship or a friendship or something. And then you realize, wait, they just wanted to get into this show or in this article or so, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's definitely hard, but I love that we're all saying, as kind people, we're not allowing that to change us. And I think that's really the message,
Yeah,
for sure.
we started this off on a on a
Yes, that's how we do around here. We get deep when we talk to things, I'm putting a
yeah.
positive spin on talking to things.
That's what I appreciate so much about this podcast, and why I'm,
Thank
so
you.
happy to be a guest on the show and just talking to things with you, but really being able to, to really think back about situations and things that have
Yeah,
helped to, I wouldn't say shape you, but have helped you to gain clarity as you move and navigate the
I
world,
love
but then
that.
also how
Yeah.
to, you just make sure that you are still being you, right?
Yes,
And that is
absolutely.
really, that is something that in all my years in the industry, that is what I come back to again and again and again.
I love that. That's beautiful. Beautiful. Perfect way to end that segment. See, it wasn't crazy. It just
No,
sounds scary, but it wasn't crazy.
it was not. It was not.
Now let's talk the real things. So I feel like I have to draw for a deep breath because I'm about to read all your accolades. So Melissa, you have spent more than a decade inside major newsrooms. And just as importantly, had the courage to step outside of them to build something new. So, before entrepreneurship, you sharpened your voice in some of the world's most influential newsrooms: Essence Magazine, NBC News, National Geographic, ABC News, and several others. And as an on air correspondent for One Caribbean Television and CBS Puerto Rico. Across each role, you're reporting consistently centered culture, community, and global impact, often in places and among people too frequently overlooked. You are also a Pulitzer Prize guarantee, an Ethel Payne International Reporting Fellow for Africa, a three-time Diaspora Journalist of the Year honoree. My girl, I can't breathe at this point. And a summa cum laude graduate of Howard University.
HU.
So many so many beautiful accomplishments. And
Thank you so
beyond those
much.
titles, you're welcome. Beyond those titles, you're widely known as a connector, as someone who bridges Caribbean entrepreneurs, global media, and cultural institutions with intention and care. So, with all of that being said, I know that's where you are now, but with all my guests, I like to go back to the beginning. What would you say was your first moment in your life where you realized that journalism or media was something that you wanted to do?
Yeah, I love this question. I knew I wanted to be a journalist when I was probably around 10 years old.
Oh
And
my
it was
gosh.
after my family settled in New Jersey. My parents were in Jamaica, Queens at first, big
Mhm,
Guyanese community there.
mhm.
They settled in New Jersey, and my grandmother used to send me, there's a Chinese Jamaican West Indian market in the
What?
neighborhood that literally I still go to this day, Joe's Market.
Oh, I love
And
that.
we would go in there, of course, picking up all the foods and fruits and everything, but also the newspapers. And I
Mhm.
really loved, valued, and appreciated how much my grandmother was so enveloped and excited and felt so connected to home still by just being able to read the local newspaper from Guyana in the store.
Mm.
And I would sit down and read it with her. She would know, what happened at the church, who dead, what happening with this, da, da, da. And those things, she was so excited to still be able to know what was happening. And I was like, wow, if
Yeah,
this newspaper could keep her connected to Guyana and this could make her feel, like she had a piece of home, then
yeah.
wow, there is so much power in storytelling. And I want to do that. That was
I
like
love that.
one of the most like defining, like clear moment when I said, okay, I want to do this. And, being someone who was born in New York, who has had my life shaped both by time in New York, New Jersey, and in Guyana, I
Yeah.
really saw the importance and the power of storytelling as a bridge builder, as a
Mm.
connector, as
Mhm.
something that really could make a difference. And on top of that, my parents also watch the news regularly. Like I can literally see in my mind sitting down with my parents to watch like Peter Jennings' World News Tonight on Channel 7 as a
Oh,
child. And so
yeah.
those things really inspired my want to become a journalist. And then as I
Mhm,
got older,
mhm.
I'm recognizing that I'm existing between two worlds, right? The
Yes,
the
yes. The
the
duality.
yes, the duality was rough,
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
talking mid 90s, early to mid 90s,
Mhm.
the coolness that exists in being, Caribbean. It was not at that time. And
Right,
so,
right.
just wanting to understand, how can I make other people understand that, you know, yes, I live between these two worlds, but they can connect and they should connect, and they're both special, and I don't have to choose between one or the other because they're both a
Exactly.
part of me. And that is so important. And I saw that storytelling and
Hmm.
telling stories, journalism, reporting, letting people know, not only letting them know what was happening, but
Hmm.
ensuring that they got the facts and understood what was going on in the world around them. I knew that that was an incredible bridge builder and that I could be a person to really be a part of that, like seriously. And it
I
stuck
love
with me
that.
since what, like, yeah, probably like 10 years, 10 years old.
Wow, that is amazing. And it really sounds like you went off of how all those situations, whether it was sitting with your parents or going to the store with your grandmother, how they made you feel, right? So it wasn't anyone telling
Absolutely.
you like you should do this or you would be good at this. Like it was the feeling, the joy that you seem to have had, having these experiences and recognizing the joy that it brought to even your grandmother just to be able to keep that kind of communication with where she's from.
Yeah, seeing that joy, seeing that connectivity it brought her and making
Mhm.
and the way that it still made her feel part of her community back
Yeah,
home,
yeah,
it showed me like, wow, there's so much power in telling stories. I need to be doing that.
yeah, I love that. And as a first generation Guyanese American, how did your identity inform the kinds of stories that you were drawn to even early on in your career?
Yeah, for so many years, when I can remember back in college, I did have a lot of great opportunities to tell multiple stories. And I
Mhm.
really value Howard University for literally giving me the space to dream big and to do it my way. Like I'm hosting the Island Hopping show on WHBC 8. I'm interviewing Damian Marley. I'm interviewing Masha Montano as a 19-year-old, right? And
Yeah, I love that.
it was an incredible space for growth. I'm on Capitol Hill. I'm doing all these things.
Mhm.
And they gave me that space. But outside of that, the news industry was really telling you that you had to, in order to be successful, you had to be telling these kinds of stories. And for
Ah,
I was like, but why? Like, why not be able to tell the stories of where I come from, where my family is from, where the worlds I grew up between. And
right,
I
right.
often found myself pushing back against the notions of only seeing, certain kinds of stories if it was sensational. So very early on, I saw the disconnect in what was covered and we would only see Caribbean stories if it was some kind of natural disaster,
Yes,
or if it was like, okay, here's your next vacation spot. But what I was not
so
seeing
true.
were the real lived, complex, creative, historically rich lives, layered lives of Caribbean people and the
Mhm.
diaspora. And very early on, like in my college career, I kept saying, you know what? I have to figure out how to do this, like
Mhm.
in my career. But there was no, when you think about international reporting at that time, we're talking
Mhm.
2004, 2005. I
Mhm.
was like, I have to figure out how I'm going to be able to get people to see that we should not just see ourselves for something negative or
Right,
be
right.
only thought of as somebody's, vacation destination. There are real stories here that need to be told.
Right. I love that. I love that. And clearly, after running out of breath from your achievements, you surely did just that.
I
But I
figured it
want
out.
you did, you did. So, if we go back to 2021, you made the leap from legacy media or traditional media into entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So, what risk, within that felt the biggest, like in that moment, would you say?
It was a year, just under a year after the pandemic in 2020. I was a correspondent traveling the Caribbean, working for One Caribbean TV. Some of the best years of my life, literally. Like who,
Love
who
that.
wouldn't love to be living and working across the region, particularly the
Yeah,
Eastern
that sounds
Caribbean region?
amazing.
It was
Yeah.
fantastic. Really
I'm
great
just thinking about the
colleagues.
food. Anyway,
Listen,
sorry.
No, listen, that was a big part of it. The food, the getting to experience so many things and making lifelong friends that I still talk to
Mm.
this day. But for
Oh, I love
me,
that.
what changed in me was seeing that, one, the pandemic meant that I got laid off, right? Real talk. I got laid off. The travel industry had suffered a lot as well. And I was really trying to figure out, how can I marry all of my passions together into something that no one can fire me from, right? No one can take
Yeah.
away. And I wanted to combine the fact that I have a network news television background. I know how to do hard news, but I'm a traveler and I've traveled the Caribbean region for so many years. I have all this knowledge, but I also understand how newsrooms work from a production standpoint. How can I marry the production side of things, getting newsrooms to understand the importance of this coverage and marrying all those things together? Because there was no job that was going to give me this. So I decided, well, you know what? I'm going to create my company, Mel&N Media, to do just that. And of
Love
course,
that.
it's this February makes 6 years, and I can't believe time has flown by so
Oh my
fast.
gosh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was not planned. I did not realize that. So that's like divine
Yes, it's just,
intervention.
I thought about it as I was answering, like, wait, this was February, 6 years ago. But I took
Wow.
the leap because I recognized that I could either sit and complain about the fact that I was not going to find the kind of the job that was going to let me do all these things, or I could
Mm-hmm.
create what I wanted while still building myself, building and working in media. So I didn't, I continued to rise in the news industry and do different things, but I knew that it was imperative that I build my own business and utilize my skills both, in policy and politics, in network news production, in
Mm-hmm.
travel and tourism coverage, and bring all of those things together. And I knew I had a really unique lens because I understand what it takes for legacy media outlets and major news outlets to cover our stories. And I also understood
Yeah.
that in order to really make a difference, you
Mm-hmm.
have to be a decision maker.
Yes, absolutely.
And so coming into a space, like I did it for as a reporter for many years, but coming on or coming in as a consultant or as a partner or as someone who has sitting on a board or has senior editorial leadership is very different than just saying, okay, I want to pitch this story. That does its part and continues to do its part, and it's very important. But
Right.
I also knew that I was at a space where I needed to be a decision maker, someone who's going to advocate and speak up for stories when we're pitching story budgets or when you're pitching
Mm-hmm.
calendars. Things are planned well in advance at across the news industry. I wanted to make sure that I was also advocating for these stories and being in a position to amplify, knowing the importance of seeing ourselves and seeing our stories and seeing that diversity. We can't just talk about diversity and not include our voices as well. And what does that look like outside of us too for other groups? So that was what really kind of was the switch for me. Was, okay, I've done so much as a reporter and I'm proud of that, but I need to think bigger because this is
Yeah.
bigger than me. It's bigger than a story. It's about
Mm-hmm.
really creating an ecosystem. It's really creating creating an ecosystem that really can zero into creating change, the change I not only I want to see, but I know is also important for so many others to see in media, right? And I'm one voice, but there's so many others doing their things. But I
Mm-hmm.
knew that in order to really, really move the needle in the way I wanted to, I had to say, okay, yes, there's lots of comms companies and agencies and things out there, but we have a specialty. Here's how, here's why, and here is also why this is so important.
Yeah, for sure. And through that, you've demonstrated that culturally rooted storytelling, as you said several times, can drive both representation, but also revenue, And
Yes.
that reminds me of a friend of mine, CJ Milan, who, as most people know, would have put on Vibes Cartel's first tour in the US, or first couple shows, I should say, not tour in the US. And, she's a woman, she's half Jamaican, and like you, grew up in New York. And she showed the world that, there is revenue in the Caribbean community. So why do you
Absolutely.
think why do you think that this truth took so long for just the industry, meaning entertainment or just media as a whole, to really embrace?
I'm not sure that there's one answer to that, but I
Yeah,
can say that, for a long time, there was so much conformity in media in general, right? And this doesn't just
true.
apply to the Caribbean community. This just applies across the board. And I think
Mhm.
for when we may think of something, or we may say, okay, it's time to get more of us in leadership positions or in these spaces, by the time we reach that, the industry is catching up to us maybe 5 years after. So
True.
I don't know that there is. I definitely can't say that there's one answer to that, but I do think that for a lot of us, it takes us time to see our own power as well, to really understand that one no doesn't mean you stop and you just kind of continue on business as usual. It's,
Right,
hey,
right.
who are the people that believe in me that I can help to amplify and kind of get in front of people a little faster, or to help me onto that journey, or to create that next push.
Mhm.
So I think that we had to recognize our own power. The
Yes,
industry
absolutely.
definitely takes time to catch up, and I mean several years behind. And it has taken a bit of a shift for people to understand diversity, meaning not
Mhm.
only diversity in, ethnic background, nationality, race, religion. That diversity means a lot of different things, and not because you covered one story from a region or a group of people means that you've done what you need to do.
Right,
And so I
absolutely.
think I think in really holding organizations accountable, or having social media in terms of community to really galvanize behind, where we didn't really have that 15
Mhm,
years ago. I think
mhm.
that has certainly helped for sure, but I really do think that seeing and understanding that we have to be in positions of power has also helped move the needle. And then sometimes, if you're not able to be in a position of power where you are, then creating your own and understanding that there will be a community that supports you when you're authentic,
Absolutely.
to take that leap. So yeah, there's so much there. So yeah, not one answer, but I hope
Yeah,
I
yeah, it's
answered that. I hope
complicated.
I
No, you
yes.
did, because like you said, there's not really one answer. I think there's several nuances, and then just being of Caribbean descent, a lot of intersectionality exists when you talk about diversity, right? So I
Mm.
am Jamaican, but there's intersectionality of me being a woman of, the Indo-Caribbean population. Like there's so many
Indeed.
different nuances to who we are as Caribbean people that it's really hard to hone in on what the reason is. But I think one of the other important things you said is that we have to value our stories and ourselves first. And I think our parents' generation that came to, whether it was the UK or the US or any other big country outside of their island, they wanted to adapt and they needed to adapt, whereas our generation and the generations after us, they're more of like, okay, I'm going to adapt, but I'm still taking who I am with me,
Yeah,
and I think
indeed.
that now translates to broader media knowing like, okay, their stories are important because the population of Caribbean persons in the diaspora, particularly New York in and of itself, is extreme, and if major companies realize this, they would focus on revenue and they would see that our dollar is just as sacred and matters just as much as any other community. So I
And
think that was a brilliant answer.
thank you. And you made me think of one other thing, which is that a lot of times when you I'm trying to think about a lot of times the Caribbean community would get lumped in with other communities, right? So when you're thinking statistically, or you're thinking about how do we quantify ourselves by the numbers, that can be
Hmm.
really hard, where the specific data is not really, being analyzed for those nuances, right? That has
Right.
been a challenge for quite a long time. So you can't say, well, I don't know, 500,000 Caribbean American people want this
That's
or
true.
value that. So that was a issue for a really long time. And then on top of that, when you think about the industry, I can speak from a news perspective. I remember being told by, news directors, different parts across the country, you had to conform. I remember wearing my little bob hairstyle. Hair had to be bone
Mm-hmm.
straight. You wanted the certain look, the blazers, the skirts, what have you.
Yeah.
You were it was those like unspoken things. You just knew that you had to look a certain way, do a certain thing. And then the other thing was, you didn't want to be quote unquote pigeonholed as the person that did Black stories or Caribbean stories. And for me, I pushed against that. I'm like, how is that pigeonholing myself by saying that I have a specialty in covering the
Ah,
stories of my people, right? The same way someone
mm-hmm.
can specialize in sports or business or
Very true.
fashion. How is this seen as pigeonholing rather than being able to specialize? And so I took that as a challenge for myself to say,
Tell them.
I've done what I need to do. I've covered local news for all these years. So you
I
mean to
love
tell me
that.
now that I want to specialize in telling the stories that I've told my whole life, this is somehow going to pigeonhole me? So I pushed back against that. And I think from an industry standpoint, we have seen a shift where it's no longer like, you see a lot now of more like people who are news anchors or entertainers, like, I have XYZ background, or my parents are from X, or I grew up here. Whereas before, it was the kind of thing that some people didn't feel comfortable sharing because they didn't want to be seen
Mm-hmm.
as like, oh, this person is gonna just try to, I don't know, amplify their own story. And I think that is,
Ah,
we as a people sometimes take those projections from others and allow it to scare us into not being who we
agreed.
are.
Agreed.
And for
Yeah.
me, I was just like, this is literally one of the best parts of who I am. And I'm not going to let anybody dilute that because they're afraid of nothing, really. Like, I
Yeah.
am not going to let that be diluted for anything. I know that the work that I do is special, and I know that I can do your job, my job, and tell these stories too. And I'm not going to allow that to be diminished because of anyone's insecurities or anyone's biases. I know that we deserve as
Absolutely.
much attention and context and nuance and specificity as anybody else. And that
Mm-hmm.
is what has taken me through my career. I know it wasn't always the popular thing to do, but
Mm-hmm.
it was one of the smartest things I've done for myself, was bet on myself and understand that telling Caribbean stories, telling diaspora stories would be something that made me stand out in the best possible way.
I
And I'm
love
glad
that.
that I did that.
I love that. Me too. I'm glad you did that as well, because I probably wouldn't have been able to find you. So that's amazing. But speaking of all of those accomplishments, you were also named Diaspora Journalist of the Year multiple times, which I think speaks to trust. And I think trust is really important. Like for me, I feel so good that people trust me to come on this podcast and not know the exact questions I'm going to ask, but they trust from maybe listening to other episodes, or maybe they're friends of mine, so they know me and they know I wouldn't ask them anything that would be salacious or anything like that. So for me, I know trust is really important. As a journalist, how do you maintain that trust, especially with communities and with the different audiences that cover in your stories?
Yeah, this is such a great question. I think it's because people understand that whether I am reporting a story or not, I am in the community. I'm not just showing up because I need a quote or I'm trying to get this interview. I'm showing up because I care, or I'm showing up because this is a part of who I am as well.
Yeah.
That I actually would take the time and, support, or I would actually take the time and just let people know that I'm there. I think that is something that has served me no matter what role I've been in. And this is
Hmm.
across newsrooms, that it wasn't transactional. And that for me has been the reason why I can pick up the phone and, call people and say, hey, we're working on this, or I'm trying to do this. Can you
Mm-hmm.
help me? And,
Mm-hmm.
or we'd love to partner on X, Y, and Z. And people trust me and they trust my work and they trust, what I've done because I have treated people and I show that I am a part of the community, and not just taking from the community, right? Or I don't just
Mm-hmm.
see you as, hey, you're gonna help me get to this next thing. And I think
Ooh,
sometimes
yes.
we lose that a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times
Mm-hmm.
in just this, I guess, this push to, I don't know, to be seen or to be the next biggest thing. And for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
it's never about going viral or having the biggest story ever. I think
Mm-hmm.
the what sticks out in my mind is I can remember sometimes working on stories and people saying, "Oh, I thought you were from this island. I thought you were from here because you write like you're from, like, I thought you were from here because you write as if you grew up here. Like, you're writing. I love it." That is such a compliment because then it means that I really took the time to get to know a community or a people or a tradition.
Mm.
And I didn't just think I knew it just because, right? Or I always
Right.
come into
Right.
every story with a fresh pair of eyes and I speak to people as if, I don't know and I'm learning, not as if I know it all. And that has always been one of the biggest compliments when people mistake or think I'm from X island or Y island because they said, well, you write as though you're one of us, you're from here. So that has always been really important to me. And I think that people trust that no matter what the story, I'm not just there to get a quote and leave. I actually take the time to have a conversation with you, understand what's going on, that we're trying to, in the story, to amplify certain things, but being respectful and mindful of things that people may not want to share at all times. And just always bringing those little human elements into it has allowed people to see that I'm going to be present whether there's a headline or not. And that has
I love
taken,
that.
that same approach has been taken into Mel&N Media, where a lot when people think of, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't you worked with this person, that person, how did you make it happen? These are relationships that have been built over years of, this is years
Mm.
of showing up, years of staying
Mm.
in touch, years of understanding that you cannot just think that reaching out to people when you want something is what is going to
Hey,
get you, you know,
Melissa,
to
listen.
the next thing. Like, you have to genuinely give a
Ooh,
damn about people and genuinely make
yeah.
connections that connection may not turn into a partnership for 5 years, but to
Mm-hmm.
genuinely show up for people, to genuinely show up for community, to genuinely love. I genuinely love covering these stories. I genuinely love the partnerships that we have throughout Mel&N Media. I genuinely love when people and brands say, hey, we are trying to reach these communities. We really, we trust your voice, you and your team, to really bring it across in this way. Then that is it. But that has to mean that you're authentic from the start.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said so much that I'm sure not only myself, but so many persons can relate to, really, no matter what industry they're in, but particularly media entertainment. I think a lot of times there can be some people that can have a sense of entitlement, right? So they've met you, they've in their mind made a relationship. And so maybe you're having an event and they feel like they should have been invited because they've known you for 2 seconds and you guys had a laugh and they should have been invited. And then when they're not, they can have an attitude or, maybe think of you in a certain way, right? And
Mhm.
then that's when you realize, and we spoke about it earlier, that is them showing you what their real intentions are. And that is incumbent upon you to say, all right, not calling this person a bad person, but they're just not my person, or they just don't
Not
have
my
good
person.
intentions for me?
Right.
And it's funny because as you were talking, I was kind of laughing to myself because I remember during or right before the CBN, the Caribbean Business Network, they do great work also.
Of course.
Before
Indeed.
the
Indeed.
before the Icon Awards, I remember they made a post, and I'm summarizing, but basically it seems like people were reaching out to them and saying like, why wasn't I nominated? And I should have been nominated, this and that. but they weren't even following them. They didn't even know they existed before. But because they saw other persons in the community getting recognized, they felt entitled for this organization that's been around doing great work. I'm just thinking, imagine if I was Nicole, right? I can't speak for her, but I'm just thinking, wait a minute, I've been doing work in this community for years, and you're not even approaching me or my organization saying, wow, this is great. How can I be involved? Even if you're being pretentious, right? It's so interesting how there are people that don't even think of it in that way. They just see something and they feel
And
entitled
they
to the
feel
access of the outcome.
And the entitlement is the fastest way to lose out. Most definitely. No one owes anyone anything at all. I do think what we have seen, especially with social media, is because you have proximity to people, sometimes people equate that with automatic access. And that is not true in any sense of the word. You may have proximity to someone, you can follow
Right.
them, they may engage, but that does not somehow now turn into you being able to DM or call or do, those kinds of things
Mhm.
to further whatever it may be that you may be trying to do. There's a way to go about that, of course. But I think with anything, people see right through those things. And I think it's important that we do, because you want to keep people around you that want to be around you for you. And yes, there are certain times where that is going to be a partnership or a potential, or a potential something that could benefit both. But there's a way to go about things. And so yeah,
Absolutely.
sometimes we see things on social media and I'm just like, huh?
Listen, it's like you have to laugh. You really do have to laugh.
I totally,
Exactly.
totally
Exactly. And I say all of what I said to say that the way in which they handled it, I also thought was beautiful, right? Like to have a carousel where they're speaking in our dialect and addressing everything professionally, but letting people know this is how you engage with our community. This is how you engage with us. I thought it was very tactful in the way that they handled it. And I think it's such a brilliant example of the way that you deal with persons who feel entitled. You don't have to be boisterous. You don't have to be like them. And it's back to what we said in the beginning of this conversation. They kept who they were as an organization, right? But also were able to put persons in their place that felt that sense of entitlement. So I just thought those two kind of correlated, as a
agree.
beautiful example of how to deal with that. So last question before we get into our final segment. What kind of media ecosystem would you say are you hoping to build for the next generation?
Oh, wow. I love that you mentioned next generation, because that is part of the reason why Melanin Media was even, founded in the first place. Because I kept thinking about not only how can I create more opportunities for myself or for the
Mhm.
team that I'll be able to employ and work with, but it's about how do we open up opportunities for the generations coming, behind us. How do we make that more accessible? And so I think for me, it's definitely a couple of things. One of them really has to do with the fact that we focus, of course, on storytelling, on production, but the other pillar of that is education. So, what we
Yeah.
are doing, especially in 2026 and beyond, is we are not only focused on telling the stories and working on major productions and ensuring that we are working with companies to expand their reach to diverse audiences, particularly,
Mhm.
of course, the Caribbean and diaspora communities, but also expanding the education pillars. And that's training opportunities for talent in the Caribbean when it comes to production, when it comes to journalism, when it comes to content creation. That means a lot more involvement with summits and trainings and providing of tools to the up and coming generation. That means scholarships as well, and it's a part of what Melanin Media is really, really building out this year, is expanding our production arm, but expanding the education arm to make sure that we lessen barriers to access for people who have talent, who really are great at this, but also need help to get to the next level, right? There was no roadmap for me in terms of how do I figure this out? How do I make sure that this is something that is viable? How do I make money? How do I understand how do I understand trademarking, my company name and my business taxes and making the most out of everything? How do I protect my intellectual property going into things? And so what I've been able to accomplish with Mel&N Media is building a profitable, mission-driven media and content business, but that's rooted in our storytelling. And I've been able to translate my journalism skills and that background
Mm-hmm.
into a business model with great client relationships and a sustainable production model. Now, what we're going to do is expand that production model, because not only are we going to be producing great films and docuseries and other content, but we're going to be ensuring that we're training the next generation along with that. And then on top of that, ensuring that we are going and reaching back into the universities, into the training programs to ensure that we are lessening the barriers to entry into this industry. And also, really, what is also incredibly important under education is working with the creative industry across the Caribbean region. There are some places that do it incredibly well. Big ups to Jamaica on that one, because there's nobody playing when it comes to the films, the music, all those good things. But on a
Aw,
larger scale, we know
yeah.
that the creative industries is something that is in, in its infancy in a lot of Caribbean countries. And there's a lot of support for ensuring that we're growing the orange economy for our musicians, for our artists, our artisans, for our content creators, our filmmakers, our journalists. And so really being, not only, we definitely will not be an observer, right, solely of what's taking place. We are going to be actively involved in ensuring that we are supporting those frameworks, right? Whether that's policy, whether that's events, training, tools, those kinds of things. So I'm really excited about how we're going to grow those two pieces of the business over the next 3 to 5 years. There will be a lot
Yeah.
coming with that. And I'm really glad you asked that question, because sometimes you don't, like, you're doing it in process, but
Mm-hmm.
I think that is what is like so exciting for me, because it is not just, hey, we're producing this content or we're working on these projects. We're actually doing things that is going to have lasting impacts on our creative industries, our film and entertainment. And that for me is really important, because it's about legacy work, right? What is
Yeah.
the legacy that we are going to build with what we do and who we impact and who we partner with? So that is the next step for us, and I'm really
Mm-hmm.
excited about how it's going to take shape in the next 2 to 3 years.
I love that. So exciting. So exciting. I can't wait to see all the wonderful things that Melon Media does in these next coming years for sure.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so now we are going to go to our final segment before my thank you, where I ask you a few rapid fire questions. And I would like you to answer with the first thing that comes to mind. Just a little bit of
Okay.
fun. What is your favorite Guyanese food?
Oh my gosh, nothing like a good Guyanese chow mein with extra pepper. Like, chow mein is my love for life.
Gosh,
And
I've
a
never
good
had that, and I
roti.
have so many Guyanese friends. A shame. I need to
Yes.
try that. I thought you were going to say
Yeah.
pepper pot for sure. So I need to try
So
that.
I love a chow mein to death, and there's nothing like a good Guyanese curry ever. Like, nothing like it.
No, you got I'm sorry, but well, I shouldn't say I'm sorry. Let me rewind and come again. Statement. You guys have the best curry in my opinion.
They hello, you have no pushback here. It just is what it is. It just is what it is. Ramen and curry, loves for life.
Love that. Love that. Okay, so last year was my first time enjoying Spice Mass. So I have to ask, what are your top 5 favorite Grenadian soca songs right now?
Oh my gosh. So right off the top of my head, um, Payroll by Muddy.
Oh,
Literally,
nice.
I mean, we know it broke the internet and it did all the things.
Yes.
Um, all the things. I love Vaughn's. Why can't I think of the name of the song right now?
Jab decisions.
Jab decisions, like jab decisions will literally play in my head probably every morning until the end of time.
I
I
love
don't
that.
see that ending at all. It was so incredibly done.
Yes, for sure.
Like it's just one of those things that, do you remember where you were when? That is literally going to be one of those songs where you're like, yes, I remember exactly where I was, what I was doing, who I
Hmm.
was with. And I love that. I love the song Down in Greens from Mr. Golden. I
Oh
just
my
love
gosh, I
it's
love that song too.
a great groovy
Yes.
song. And I just love how he bigs up Grenada in that and how he talks to you about the Spice Island. So even if you've never been, you get a nice picture of it.
Yes. Yes.
And I thought that was really dope that he
Yeah.
did it
I
that way.
love, love, love that song.
And Mr. Killa and Patrice Roberts had a song called Shake Down the Party.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. How could I forget about
Yeah,
that?
that song
Yes.
could, like, I feel like it's the kind of song that is just shake up the road, shake up the place, shake up everything. That would
Hmm.
just be crazy. And I love that collab between them. Love Patrice Roberts, and I thought that was a nice collaboration and how they did
Yes.
that.
Beautiful. Well, we agree on all of those. Although everybody knows Muddy Payroll is my favorite, but we agree on all of those, especially Mr. Golden. And for me, I'm not supposed to be doing this right now, but I just have to say it. It's so funny that you say that particular song that he has, because that was what was playing when I walked into Soca Monarch. Like he was on stage. So for me,
I
that's
love
like,
it.
I love the song before, but now
See,
it's
a
like
core
embedded in my mind
memory.
as a memory.
It
Yeah, for
Yes,
sure.
it's a core memory, and I love the fact that Carnival has so many distinct memories. It's like, okay, this year, where were you? I was like, oh, I played with this band. I was here. Remember,
Yeah,
we did this, and it's just so vivid in my mind, and I love that
yeah,
because it's literally memories for a lifetime.
absolutely. And for me, that's what Soca Monarch from the whole weekend, that was it for me, just because I'm just such a music lover. So that was like a dream, just being somewhere for hours and just hearing music and musicians and just the people. And just there was something in the air, I should say.
Oh,
And
always
it was
the
an
place. The
amazing
place was
time.
shaken. The place
Yeah,
was
it was
shaken,
really an
literally.
amazing time for sure. I'm just recovering. I feel I feel like everyone should experience it at least once for sure.
At least. I think, and what I love is that across the region, every carnival has a distinct flavor, a uniqueness about it, and you
Yes.
get different experiences in each one. And so I always say to people, depending on like who you are, what you want to try, I really do think there is value in going and having different carnival experiences and being
Yeah, for
able to
sure.
really like shape memories from doing different
Mhm.
things. Like, of course, you want to go and do, get your jab in Grenada, get your Soca Monarch. Definitely, like St. Vincent and the Grenadines too. Soca Monarch and those two
I
places is like
heard. I
unlike
heard about
anything
that.
you will ever
Yeah?
have.
Oh, I'll have to visit for sure.
Island hopping around the Grenadines or going to Antigua. There's just so many experiences. And I love that
Yeah.
for us because there's so much to
Yeah.
explore.
I love that. I love that. Beautiful. Okay, two more. If you could go to anywhere in the world, let's just say you were given $1 million and you could travel anywhere, any country, I should say, in the world, where would you go?
Oh, wow. First, I'd get to all of the Caribbean countries I have not yet been to. A lot of people tend to
Okay.
think I've been to all. I have not yet, but the
Okay.
goal is to go to every single one. So that'll be
Love
first.
that. Love that.
And then I have not gotten to, I've only been to the continent once. So I definitely want to get back to Africa. And specifically, I want to go
Mhm.
to Nigeria,
Mhm.
Mauritius, and
Mhm.
Tanzania.
Mm,
And
nice. Okay.
then maybe I'll be tired, so I need to take a break and then get to Asia after that.
You're a
get to
millionaire,
get to
you could just
Thailand.
have someone massaging you on the jet on the way to your next place.
You're right. I forgot I became a millionaire in the process.
Yes.
But I say all of that, and one of the things I'm really excited about is that my docuseries Destination Diaspora is
Mhm.
definitely going to get me to a lot of these places. The
I
show
love that.
won
Yes.
the Black Travel Summit and BET Plus Passport to Storytelling competition last year in Brazil. And so
Oh,
we're
it's
producing
amazing.
it, and my goal is to, through some of the stories we get to tell, knock some of these places off of my list.
There
So
you
this
go.
is
There
really
you
putting it
go.
into the universe, and in each place we
Yes.
go, showing
Yes.
our connections.
Yes. And we'll have to talk more about that next time. Guys, she has so many accomplishments. I couldn't fit it in an hour. So we have that just means you have to come back. That's all that means.
Yes, when Destination Diaspora is on a streaming platform near you, we'll be back.
Yes, exactly. And I love that you said when. Speak it into existence.
Indeed.
All right, two more. If you had to choose between print or digital, which one would you choose?
Ooh. Print.
Print.
Yeah, nothing like touching and feeling something you wrote, nothing like seeing it and being able
Yeah.
to really, like, I think people, you value it more for
Yeah.
sure. And we're seeing a
Yeah.
lot of people kind of go back to printing things, photos, magazines. They want to listen to records, all those things. I value that
Yeah.
kind of. I value those things. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, print definitely.
I love that. You sound like my friend Kayla. She love that girl love a book, you know? Love a book.
Listen, I try to get Kindle get Dashaway because I just need to touch a book. Go and buy the
Yes, no, I get
magazine,
it.
please.
I get it. I feel the same way. My only problem is I travel so much. So for me, sometimes for efficiency, audio is more helpful. But you both are right. Like having a book, touching, feeling the pages, it makes a difference for sure. All right. So for our last segment, I am going to do my thank you. And I make the disclaimer all the time. Don't bother with the crying because we can't be on here crying. So, Melissa, your work reminds us that journalism isn't just about bearing witness. It's about building pathways for stories to travel honestly. I think that's really at the core of what we spoke about today. To me, what stands out is your refusal to choose between rigor and imagination, between your Caribbean heritage and where you live, and between impact and sustainability. I think that through all of your endeavors, and the list long like Damian Marley dreads, but it's a lot, but it's amazing. You've shown that it's possible to honor heritage, serve global audiences, and still remain accountable to the peoples whose stories you tell, right? So, as you continue to expand through Melon Media, Destination Diaspora, which we'll hear plenty more about in the future, and the many rooms that you've now helped to open, I just hope that you see your role not only in our community but your role as an example to Caribbean women, and that there is a young person out there that's going to hear this and maybe they were having doubt about doing something to help their community or stepping outside their traditional role, and your story, your lived experience will inspire them. So thank you for all the work that you've done and continue to do. And thank you for coming to talk the things with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for saying that. Like, sometimes you don't think about what you're doing while you are doing it. You're just like, I'm trying to get to the next step, or I see something bigger. I see something bigger
Yeah,
here. But it's been truly an honor and a great responsibility to do this work, and I am so excited for what is to come. So thank you for having
of
me and for just
course.
thinking enough of the work that I've done to have me on the show.
Of course, really proud of the work that you've done and you continue to do for sure. It was a pleasure having you.
Yes, and I can't wait to come back. Thank you.